And we are live. It's the Revved Up 906 podcast, a Detroit Pistons podcast to be exact. And I'm Hudson.
And I'm Ryan.
And before we get into episode number 24, yes, we are in a new studio. We have officially partnered up with Campfire Coworks here in downtown Marquette. And they are an office sharing space that also has multiple studios, so we are very excited to be here. We are having some technical difficulties with some of our engineering. That's why I'm holding my little lapel mic. But Ryan, it's kind of exciting to have like a partnership like Campfire Coworks. What does this mean to the podcast and us growing?
It means that it allows us to not only grow, of course, but it creates a platform that we can share with others to help bring them in here. And let's say you want to start your own podcast. Let's say you want an office space. Let's say you want a conference room to do business things or business conferences rather. This is the place to do it. Mm-hmm. They're located on Washington Street, downtown Marquette. Can't get better than that.
No, absolutely. So we are so excited to be bringing you guys higher quality content, and we're excited to have Campfire Coworks alongside for the journey. Without further ado, let's get into episode number 24. Now that the Detroit Pistons season has officially come to an end, and a lot of what we knew of the Pistons last year is going to be flipped, with Dwayne Casey taking a step down, with certain players maybe leaving in free agency like Hamidou Diallo. We want to kind of evaluate each and every player while we can in the offseason. And this week, we are going to be talking about Jalen Duren in his rookie year. We saw him have 19 double-doubles in his 67 games as a Detroit Piston. He averaged 9 points, nearly 9 rebounds, and then 1 block per game, shooting 65% from the field. When talking about Jalen Duren's rookie year, how did you kind of go about this?
So, again, like the Jaden Ivey episode, I broke down the grading tree of amazing season, better than expected, to F, who is this guy?
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to make sure my notes were the same for Jalen as they were for Jaden.
Right.
Because it's just fair that every player evaluation should be lined up the same, and you should be looking at around the same aspects. Granted, Jalen is different than Jaden in the sense that Jalen's a big, Jaden's a guard.
Right.
And so you really want to take into account different stats, but majority of the time you still want to look at their season averages. You want to look at their totals and comparisons. And I really looked at comparisons like I did for the other episode. And the top 10 comparable players that 538 projected is number 1, Noah Vonleh.
Okay.
Number 2, Jared Allen.
Ooh, I like that one.
3, Derek Favors. 4, Myers Leonard. 5, Patrick O'Brien. He used to play in the league. He's not in it anymore. Number 6, Tony Bradley. Number 7, Justin Patton. Number 8, Steven Adams. Number 9, Marquise Chris. And number 10, Robert Williams.
Okay.
And out of all those names, the ones that I love the most are Jared Allen, Derek Favors, Tony Bradley, Steven Adams, honestly, Marquise Chris, and Robert Williams.
Yeah. I love that Steven Adams comparison, especially because we see Jalen Duren almost give an equally impactful pace on both sides of the ball, kind of like Steven Adams. You have to address him defensively and also offensively.
Yeah. And the big thing for me with all those guys compared to Jalen, gosh, okay. I'll say Duren.
Yeah.
Compared to Duren is just the fact of their presence on the court. Like, they don't have to be the guy to be effective.
Right.
They are one of the key side pieces. They're Robin-esque players.
Right.
Granted, in our offense going forward, obviously Cade is going to be Batman and Jaden is going to be Robin.
Right.
But these guys go unnoticed sometimes. Like the Memphis Grizzlies, everybody thinks about John Morant, Brandon Clark, Dylan Brooks, who is overrated. Like a bunch of Jaren Jackson Jr., congrats, Michigan State. Just won Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah,
good job. But the point is, Steven Adams goes unnoticed on that team. And so that's the kind of guy that I actually love in comparison to Jalen here, in the sense that, yeah, Paul George recognized him instantly. But that's because he's better than all these guys. He's going to be better. He's going to be, in my opinion, the next Dwight Howard. And the reason why Dwight Howard isn't anything special now is because he decided to leave Orlando, and that was his fault.
One thing that I found extremely interesting with Jalen throughout his rookie year is he would have games like the way he did in the season, the ending game of the year against the Chicago Bulls. He had 4 points and 18 rebounds. And we saw that a lot from Jalen. Just, either he's always impacting the game in either category. If he's having a little low game in the points department, he's making up for it with rebounds and blocks. But then, against a solid Miami Heat team, we see them in the playoffs right now. He had 20 points and 14 rebounds, 1 block, and only 2 turnovers. That was another thing I noticed throughout Jalen Duren's rookie year, was he was efficient from the field, but then also didn't turn over the ball a lot. We saw Jaden struggle with that a lot. But then Duren really played high-quality basketball, and really that translates into wins. And I think we'll see that in the coming seasons.
I think a big key with that is he knew his role. He knew that he wasn't going to be the ball handler. He knew he wasn't going to be the point forward. He didn't know that, he knew rather that he was not going to be the go-to guy. And I think that really showed up in the box score for the full season, because you look at his stats compared to Dwight Howard. In 67 games, Dwight Howard played 82, but in 67 games, he was pretty much halfway to, if not better, than a lot of Dwight Howard's stats in 82 games. Right. Which, granted, this is a different league now than what it was then, but Dwight Howard as a rookie was something amazing. Right. So the fact that Duren is that close in comparison to Dwight that early on, oh my goodness, because we go to Jaden Ivey, we have Dwayne Wade.
Yep.
Duren, we have Dwight Howard.
Great comparisons.
And then Kate is oftentimes compared to Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
So, I'm already loving this comparison lineup for us.
Absolutely. I was very interested to see when we did the Jaden episode what his best month was. We saw him play very well. I'm drawing a blank on what month it was, but we went 0 for 11 that month. I believe it was March. But for Jaden, his best month was actually in December. He averaged 8.5 points, 10 rebounds, 0.6 steals, 0.6 blocks, and 1 turnover, which I wanted to note also just in my point of how efficient he is for being only 19 years old. And in the month of December, the Pistons went 4 for 11. So yes, not ideal, but we saw us be able to rack up a couple wins, and Jalen was always a key factor in our wins this year.
Yeah, and going back to the comparisons, though, I will throw out there that Jarrett Allen is a perfect comparison to Jalen Duren.
Yeah.
Because look at Jarrett Allen. In Cleveland, when he was in Brooklyn, he was good. He wasn't great. Then he gets traded to Cleveland, and then he's a superstar.
Right.
And, honestly, out of the big tandem that they have in Cleveland, I would take Jarrett Allen over Evan Mobley. And that's a bold take, and a little bit of a bold take at least.
Right.
But I would take Jarrett Allen over Evan Mobley, just in the sense of what everything Allen can do, where he doesn't need to be the go-to guy, where Evan Mobley is I want to be the go-to guy.
Right.
And so, Duren here, I think that's going to be perfect for him and Wiseman, because Wiseman oftentimes does want to be more of the go-to guy.
Right.
And that's not a bad thing, because Evan Mobley still balls out.
Right.
And so I love the comparison.
And it's funny because I was looking at what Jalen Duren's best game was, and it's kind of goes back and forth between the Spurs, which was in February. He had 30 points, 17 rebounds, and 4 blocks. But his second best game, which was against a better team, obviously the Spurs are terrible. They're I would even consider them worse than us as far as they're just in a bad spot.
They have worse talent than we do.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But then Jalen Duren in January against the Bucks put up 23 points, 1 assist, 2 steals, 2 blocks, and 9 of 13 from the field. Now, to put up that kind of numbers against, I believe Giannis didn't play that game, but Brook Lopez did. To be able to put up points like that against a vetted center who is going to attempt to make a deep run in the playoffs, the Bucks are known for being very defensively sound. To put up a stat line like that as a 19-year-old rookie, I'm very impressed by. And that's why I think he's in higher regard than a Noah Vonleh and stuff like that. Because, yeah, Noah Vonleh shows signs of solid play, but Jalen Duren, time and time again, when we needed him to step up and have big numbers, he showed up.
Yeah, and he didn't have to be the go-to guy every night in the sense of filling up the box score or scoring 12-plus points per game. Yeah, he can easily do that on any given night when he wants to. And most of the time, he doesn't even want to. He just wants to be effective. He wants to be a defensive threat. He wants to be an anchor. He wants to be a guy where everybody fears him. And that's what I love. Like, in the post-conference there to end the season, what was Jalen Duren rocking? He was rocking a fro, referencing Ben Wallace.
Yeah,
like, I love that reference.
Yeah.
Because that just shows you, like, okay, something's brewing.
Yep.
And going back to Milwaukee with the defensive side of things, Charles Lee, one of their assistants, keeps getting brought up and being a candidate for our next Pistons coach. And so just in the sense of what Charles Lee and Mike Budenholzer has instilled in becoming a defensive threat as a team in general, I wouldn't mind that in the Pistons because it'll showcase Jalen Duren more and it'll showcase our other top-tier defenders more. And like Killian Hayes would make a huge jump.
Right.
And so just in the sense of what Jalen Duren brings to the team is much different than what he would bring to any other team he played on.
Yeah, and having a presence like Charles Lee in the locker room with a guy like Jalen Duren who is defensive-minded goes a long way in taking strides in just the upper direction compared to even this last season. And to be able to make jumps like that is what we need if we want to be in the play-in tournament and stuff like that. We need to see these guys get better next season. And a guy like Jalen Duren, who had a year like he did, big numbers on certain nights, there's a lot in store for this guy next year, and that's why you should be even more excited to be a Detroit Pistons fan. We saw a 5-game stretch in January that I was really happy to see with Jalen. He averaged through those 5 games in January 16 points, 11 rebounds, 1 steal, 1 block, and 80% from the field. Jalen Duren, time and time again, showed that in 5-10-game stretches, he can really put in the work on these teams. And when there's mismatches, he's going to take advantage.
Yeah, he's known for that. Like, you put him anywhere on the floor, he's effective. No matter where he is, he's always going to do something to affect the other team. And, like, I referenced Paul George making comment on his podcast, going like, hey, Jalen Duren is a dog. You got to watch out for him. Yeah. And so the fact that you have Paul George, one of the best NBA players in the league currently, who is one of the best scorers on his team by far. Honestly, that's no offense to Kawhi, because I love Kawhi. But he is the best scorer on that team. But the point is, Paul George, as of now, I wouldn't call him a Hall of Famer, but he could have a Hall of Fame career still. But the point is, when you have a high-caliber all-star-esque player like Paul George saying, like, hey, you got to take notice of this guy, that's huge for us. Because, like, Jalen Duren, we acquired him via trade from the Knicks in the draft, went 13th overall. The Knicks made a mistake right there by far. And then the Hornets made a mistake because they also sent him to us. But the point is, though, like, the fact that Duren fell that far, because in like when I'm doing a rebuild in 2K and stuff like that, in previous years, I'm always drafting Jalen Duren with like the 5th, 6th overall pick, which he may be going like, yeah, that's a little high. But that's because of how good he's supposed to be.
Right.
Like the fact that he's made this jump already, and his stats are very comparable, if not better than Dwight Howard.
Right.
It's going to be much better going forward. And there's so many possibilities with our current roster where he could be even better than what he's projected to be.
And keep in mind, people, we talked about this with Jaden's episode, but Jalen put up these numbers with a roster that the rotation was changing weekly due to injuries. And we didn't hardly see Jalen at all with Cade. When right at the beginning of the season, Cade played the first 12 games. We didn't see much of Jalen Duren, nearly as much as we saw. He wasn't starting. He didn't even have starter minutes coming off the bench. We saw very little from him. And so he did this without a superstar next to him. So imagine when Cade Cunningham comes back and we really get to see what unfolds with those two guys on the court together. Also, James Wiseman, we talk about the duo of James and Jalen all the time. And we saw only a sample size of that duo. Really only the last 3 games we got to see starter minutes from them. That's not nearly enough time to build that chemistry. Just think of when those two guys and they find that chemistry and they really know how to get the ball back and forth to each other. That adds a whole nother part of Jalen's game that we didn't even see this year. So that's another exciting thing.
Yeah, and honestly, imagine a pick and roll situation where it's actually Jalen Duren and James Wiseman doing the pick and roll.
Yeah.
Like, I can actually see that.
Yep.
Because Duren, give it or not, or believe it or not, rather, does actually have handles. He can put the ball on the floor. James Wiseman can put the ball on the floor. And so imagine them just lobbing it up to each other consistently. Like, we already saw that once.
Yeah.
Or actually, wasn't it more than once? I think it was like 3 different occasions.
There was one game where it happened twice, and then I think there was another attempt in another game in the future.
Yeah, but the point is there, like, you have a big lobbing to a big.
Yeah.
That's not normal.
No.
And so when you have Duren being the pretty much a point center right there and lobbing it up to James, like, that's exciting.
Oh, yeah.
Because that adds a whole nother level to the development of his game, because we see him as like a true defender, a guy who's very efficient in the paint, who can score when he wants to.
Yep.
Imagine if he adds more of the ball handling duties or more of the point guard-esque stuff into his game too, and actually adds an outside shot.
Yeah.
Like, if he added an outside shot to his game already, my goodness, people would be talking to him about being one of the best players in that draft by far. I mean, they're already talking about it.
Yep.
But I'd put him up better than Paolo Banchero, and that's a bold take.
Right. A point I wanted to make when talking about the 5-game stretch in January, averaging 16 points, 11 rebounds, 1 steal, and 1 block, is that a lot of rookies aren't able to put together stretches of consistent play. And when you see a 5-game stretch, 10-game stretch, where Jalen Duren is putting up these numbers, it's just to show that he can find that consistency and keep those averages over 82 games. It's just he needs time to get that development, get used to that NBA schedule. And when you see that, I mean, it really just shocks me of like, okay, this is what we got in store from our guy Jalen, and this is where he might be averaging over 82 games in maybe next season or the following.
I really think the flaw for him was how much time he missed, because he missed a long stretch there due to injury. Granted, that wasn't his fault. It was majority of it was it was not even that bad of an injury, and the Pistons just were like, let's play it safe, but then also like, let's also tank a little bit and get Wemby and stuff like that, which the Mavericks got fined for. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, so dumb.
It is dumb. Granted, like, realistically, they weren't going to win that game. So it doesn't matter either way. Yeah. But the point being said is, like, if Duren would have played the same amount of games as like a Dwight Howard, he would have put up better stats.
Right.
Because his stats were there. Like, when you look at this, in 67 games, he had a total of 612 points, 595 rebounds. Like, he almost had more rebounds than points.
Right.
75 assists, which is actually a lot for him.
Yeah.
59 blocks, 92 turnovers, which is barely anything.
Yeah.
182 fouls. That is a lot, but it's not that bad compared to Dwight's.
Yeah.
He made 96 free throws, made 258 field goals, played 1,670 minutes total. And then you look at Dwight, 981 points, 823 rebounds, 75 assists, had the same assist totals,
right.
136 blocks, which is absurd.
Yeah. That's crazy.
165 turnovers, so more turnovers than Duren, more fouls, 232, and then had 277 made free throws, 352 made field goals, and played 2,670 minutes total. But the point is there, like you look at the totals between the two, Duren was almost identical in only 67 games compared to 82.
Yeah, so he was on pace to probably catch that. Maybe not the blocks. The blocks is insane.
That's absurd.
Yeah, that stat is crazy. But if he did play 82 games, I think he'd be flirting with those numbers. And that's just to show that maybe if he wasn't hurt for that 11, 12 game stint, maybe he's talking about a Rookie of the Year campaign.
And honestly, the Rookie of the Year campaign right now is frustrating because not only did you not have Duren in it, but you also did not have Ivy as a candidate. And I'm saying this to the NBA right now. What is your criteria? Because that was awful. Like, I love Walker Kessler. He should have been in it. I agree with that. But Jalen Williams?
Yeah, you've always hated on Jalen. No, I agree.
No, I'm not saying he's a bad player.
Yeah.
He's good where he was drafted. Don't get me wrong. 12th pick overall, and he's that productive already. Right. That's good. But you look at Ivy's stats. Ivy had much better stats in every single category than this dude. And yet, where is Ivy? He's not in the race, but we all know who's going to win it. It's going to be Banchero. So I think just throwing in Walker Kessler and throwing in Jalen Williams, it's kind of like, yeah, we're just recognizing you. You weren't going to win it realistically, but...
Right. I think the only thing that really gives Williams the nod is playoff berth. They're in the playoffs. I think that's like the only... That may be the reason he gets the nod. But like you were saying, we don't know the criteria. And if we do know the criteria... Leave it in the comments below, and we need to be educated. But as far as I know, it's just kind of whoever.
I'm pretty sure it's the reporters, and then it's the front office execs.
Yeah, which is okay.
Yeah, which I will say, Brad Holmes, great front office exec. We love him. Yeah. We love you, Brad. But but there's no reason why Duren or Ivy should not be in them.
Yeah, I agree. So we've talked about the comparisons of Jalen Duren's rookie year. We talked about the stats, the 5-game stretch averages. Now let's get into the final grade. What is the final grade you're going to give Jalen Duren on his rookie year?
Because that's a tough one, honestly. Because we gave Jaden a B, right?
Correct.
We both gave him a B, and that I felt bad. Because I wanted to give him a higher grade. But it made sense. But I don't think in this situation, I think you can overgrade Duren than Ivy. Just because you look at where Duren was drafted in comparison of how productive he's been compared to where Jaden was drafted. Jaden was drafted. I'm getting mixed up right now. Compared to where Jaden was drafted, it's a little bit different of criteria.
I like that point.
So with that being said, given the fact that you look at Dwight Howard's stats through 82 games total, and you look at Jalen Duren's stats through 67 games total, I would give Duren. Okay. The blocks weren't there, which if they were, oh my goodness.
I know, right? Yeah.
But I'd have to go B+.
All right. I like that. And... what was Jalen Duren's draft pick? Do you remember?
I believe he was 12.
Okay. And
Jalen Williams was 12. Jalen Duren was 13.
Okay, that means Jaden Ivey was 5, right?
Yep.
So I was very happy with Jalen Duren's play this year. His averages, I'm okay with. It would have been nice to see him kind of get around that 12 mark with points. But his consistency was great for a rookie. His passing ability was farther along than we ever expected. We were always in shock and awe after our recaps of like, wow, Jalen Duren's passing ability is sneaky good. His shot selection was terrific for a 19-year-old rookie. My only thing is there was very few games where he just took over and was dominant. We saw, maybe the difference between Dwight Howard's and Jalen Duren's stats was Dwight Howard just had a couple of those games where that dude just took over and he got the magic wins. I would have loved to have seen more of just the Jalen Duren show. We saw Cade Cunningham in his rookie year have many moments where he would go on stretches of teams could not stop him. It was the Cade Cunningham show. I would have liked to have seen that a little bit more from Jalen Duren. Also would have wanted to see, it's funny that we talked about the blocking because I wanted to see Jalen Duren's a little bit more impact defensively. Not necessarily just statistics, but just the presence that Jalen Duren was there and he was felt. We saw a lot of times teams against us get points with ease at the bucket. So with all of that being said, I'm taking this grade very seriously and I'm trying not to be too tough. I'm going to, just because of where we put Jaden with a B, I think I'm going to roll with a B-. I'm very happy with his play. I think for the 13th pick, right?
I believe that.
I'm very happy with that play. I'm going to go with a B- just because there's a certain things I feel like he fell a little short. But overall, I think we have an all-star on our hands. I think he's going to be a 7-time all-star and hopefully a defensive player of the year in there. Jaren Jackson can do it. Jalen Duren can do it. I mean, come on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, granted, what Jaren Jackson has is he has an outside shot, and he can cross people up left and right.
Defensive player of the year. I think Jalen's going to be dominant. I think he's going to find it.
Oh, I think so. If he's already rocking the fro, he's on to something.
You know what? That's a good question. Do you think he's going to rock the flow at all during next year's season?
If he does, I would love that so much.
That's a phone background.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Jalen Duren.
It's also a meme and a GIF. Yeah. But, if he does rock the fro, it's just a round of applause.
Oh, absolutely.
But if he doesn't, it's cool. I'm chill.
How about this? If Jalen Duren rocks a fro next year, I'll buy his jersey. I'll get a Jalen Duren.
I mean, I was already planning on buying one anyway.
Yeah, right. Well, that will do it for episode number 24. Before you guys leave, make sure to like and subscribe. The Revved Up 906 podcast is growing, and we want it to continue to grow. So make sure to hit that share button and turn on those post notifications. We will see you guys in the next episode. Peace.